Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who usually do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. But right now, we're on
Indie Intermission.
We are on Indie Intermission, where we will be covering one indie published book. And this time around, it is Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons by Quenby Olson.
I love it so much.
Comfort fantasy to the max. Friendship to the max, comfort fantasy to the max.
I love it.
Apologies for all you people. This is a listening, but I need to turn a light on, I realize, because it's kind of dark up here and I have to do the recap, so I need to be able to read.
My old friend.
I've come to talk with you again. Okay. But before we get into the darkness and the brightness of Miss Percy's Pocket Guide,
there's not a lot of darkness.
There's not a lot of darkness. And any darkness is always a wonderful
book.
This person didn't think that they were going to be a villain, but guess what?
Surprise!
Surprise! But Laura, before we get into it, it's been a minute. What are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
Okay, so let me just tell you about a show that my husband and I started watching last night, and we are loving. Jury Duty on FreeVee. Everybody's been talking about this show everywhere. We watched 3 episodes last night. We're obsessed. It is so funny. The only thing that we can't... So if people don't know about this show, I personally, I don't know how you haven't heard about it because they've been advertising the heck out of it. But it's a show on FreeVee, which used to be IMDb. And the premise of it is there is one person who does not realize that the jury that they are taking part of in a trial, that they are the only person who is not an actor and that this is a fake trial. So everyone involved in this is fake and is an actor except for one person who thinks the whole thing is real. And it is absolutely hilarious, the things that ensue during this show, and uncomfortable and awkward at times. And we are loving it so far. We can't wait to watch more. But we're a little worried that they're not going to be able to do multiple seasons of this because so many people are going to find out about this show that people are going to guess what's going on right away.
But also I think that can lead to like some Truman level stuff where, like, you know how they say like after the Truman Show, people kept thinking their lives were in a movie.
Yeah.
It's like probably linked to other mental health things, but like a lot of people have that. I do wonder if some people will be like, this can't be real. This can't be real. I'm on jury duty.
We were telling my dad about it, and my dad said, I'm going to question that if I'm ever called to jury duty. Like, is this real? Am I on that show? And I don't blame him because you would. But some of these situations with the other jurors, they're so out there in terms of the things the jurors are doing. But at the same time, they're so realistic that it's hilarious.
But also, I recognized one of the improv people from
Parks and Rec.
No, I recognize one of them from Sex Lives of College Girls.
Oh, really?
He's one of the love interests. And I think, he's like the one with glasses or something.
Well, Sewage Joe is one of the jurors. So you can tell that this guy doesn't, that the person who has no clue that this is a fake jury and everything.
Right.
He doesn't watch a ton of sitcoms that I do because I recognize someone that was an extra on Superstore and somebody that was an extra on... Well, he wasn't really an extra. He had a small part in Parks and Rec as Sewage Joe.
Oh, Sewage Joe.
And I'm assuming
really putting something down that I want to pick up. No, sorry.
So you got a nice drain pipe. But
you know where to find me, down in sewage.
There's one really funny moment. I'm going to just spoil it, where the jurors are all kind of on a recess and they're ordering lunch. And one of the jurors walks behind the guy who doesn't know that the whole thing is fake. And he says, "Excuse me, I'm going to go to the bathroom and rub one out." And that's the only interaction he has with this person. And then when the guy comes back into the room after supposedly being in the bathroom or whatever, somebody asks him to grab something off a top shelf in that room. Well, he goes to grab it and falls off the shelf and hurts himself or whatever and has to be excused from the jury because he's hurt. He's really hurt. Yeah. Well, they end up doing, because this is like documentary style, they end up doing like documentary style interview of all the remaining jurors. And it's the funniest thing in the world because all of the remaining jurors have deep, lasting memories with this person that they have known like a day. And people are saying like he was like a father to me, and he did all these things. He had dreams of doing this or that, and he helped children in Africa, blah 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 blah. And they all have these small little paper cranes that he made for them, except the guy that has no clue. And
all he knows is that one moment with
him. And so he's just kind of like looking around like, oh, well, that's weird. And a little bit later on in the show, we find out that he becomes the I can't remember now what they're called. The foreman. The foreman, thank you.
Yeah,
he becomes the foreman.
3 years of law school to do that, guys.
I could not remember. But he becomes the foreman, and some of the other jurors the actors had been like saying that they were competing for it or whatever, and so they kind of are like kissing his butt now that he's the foreman. Well, then another juror says, "Here, you can have my paper crane. I offer this to my leader." And the guy's like, "Oh, no, you don't have to give me your special memory. Like, you can." You bet. I don't want to take your special memory. That's yours.
Yeah.
Like the sweetest thing ever, because he has no clue that guy could give a crap about that stupid paper crane. We were just cracking up watching this show.
I will say that, like, I've seen a couple of things, like, you know how something gets so popular and then there's admittedly backlash. I've seen some percolations of backlash, and I just want to like tell someone, like, can't we just not have this? Like, yeah, like, can we just not, like, this isn't hurting anyone. Like, James Marsden has been on so many shows, like, talking about how it was really important for them not to make this guy the butt of the joke, how it was important for them to like make it about a hero's journey and making him the hero in these moments, and watching, and like,
honestly, he's very nice,
right?
The interactions that I have seen him on in this, because there's another guy that's like an inventor of sorts or whatever, and he's portrayed as kind of like the weird guy that people don't understand, and so he has taken this guy kind of aside, and he's like, I tried to tell him, like, not everybody will understand what you're like, and people don't like the inventor types sometimes, but a lot of times they do really good things. And then he says, I introduced him to A Bug's Life because there's a character on there that is like that, and I thought that he could really benefit from seeing something like that on a movie. And I was like, okay, that is adorable that he's
right.
Like, but then at the same time, I feel bad because it's like, that guy isn't really like that.
Well, and I do love the joke of like, that he met James Marsden and he was like, oh, that's what, and he like loved one of James Marsden's like worst movies, where James Marsden's like, I'm a little embarrassed that I was in that movie.
Yeah,
that's what he reminded him.
James Marsden is very funny in this though too, like playing a fictionalized version of himself.
Yeah,
where he's like reading, he's the alternate juror, and he ends up having them all have to be sequestered because he's so famous that they have to sequester the jury and everything. Well, then he ends up getting to, go back to his home with his own private bailiff,
right?
And so they're all kind of supposedly mad at him or whatever. But James is very funny, like reading a script over at the side, and then he'll be like, oh, jump scare.
Well, and I've seen the like clip of him being like, what movies have you been in? And he's listing them all. He's like, I was in Sonic, and he's like, I heard that was a bad movie. He's just awesome. So I do think, like, I don't know, I hope people give that, because like I saw a couple things in the comments where people were like, there's no way he didn't know, like, come on, he's not that stupid. And I'm like,
I genuinely think he doesn't know.
Well, and also the world is a weird place. Like, it takes a lot for you to question some stuff, like,
and that's where I'm like, okay, these jurors, the way that they're acting is pretty out there, but at the same time, I could see all of these things happening.
Right. Well, and like, he has moments where he's like, this could be reality television, like at this point. And like, he doesn't realize like that's what it is, but he is noticing that like it's very dramatic, but the world is a weird place. So like, just calm down. I haven't seen it. I've just seen a lot of clips, and I'm like, I'm interested in it. It's just one of those things where it hasn't been on my radar. I've like heard so much about it that I think I have fatigue from seeing it, and I want to like wait a little minute.
I think it's a good show for me and my husband to watch together, because it's one where it's not like I want to like race through it and watch it all. It's one where he and I can watch it together. So
he's not running to get to the Winx saga.
We never watched the second season of that.
It was a moment in time for you two.
Yeah. I don't know what happened there.
Sometimes you just get dragged into something and you're like, I don't understand why I keep watching this show. And you still do. So
I mean, that happens to me a lot.
Fair enough. I mean, samesies. I also often forget I'm watching a television show. Like just
Fair.
plumb. Like I'm like, oh yeah, I was watching that show for like a good week and a half. Like, yeah.
TV shows fall out of my brain so easily. I don't know why.
So easily. It's just how it happens, man.
Yeah.
Golden age of television and whatnot. There's so much more. But
all the content.
But what else are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
Okay, so I've read several things. I'm trying to decide if I should just talk about one in case, because I know my reading's slowing down a lot or has slowed down a lot. So I may just talk about one. But I listened to Zachary, Ying and the Dragon Emperor by Xiran Zhao. I love this book so much. It's a middle grade book.
Okay.
And people were describing it as like a Percy Jackson type book. And I would say that's a fair comparison just because it's like a young protagonist that goes on adventures and is meeting like different gods and everything. However, I think that I would almost say that this book should be like required reading for kids because in schools, because it is so informative and fun and kind. And I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of like history involved, Chinese history involved, and you have representation of different upbringings. You learn about different people with Chinese heritage that have different religious backgrounds that you wouldn't normally think of. The characters are great, and there's also like a component of gaming that's brought into this, and with the mythology of it all, it's really interesting how the author incorporates this because the gaming and the mythology is connected. Okay. So the main character is very into this certain game and has been hearing these voices and ends up finding out that he ends up finding out that he is a descendant of the Dragon Emperor.
Oh.
And so he doesn't really even know that much about Chinese culture. So he's meeting other people that are Chinese, other kids that are Chinese and are teaching him things that he hasn't really learned because he grew up in Western culture. So he obviously would not have, because we like to shift the narrative around to fit our own needs. But anyways, so he ends up finding out that basically it's almost like I'm not describing this well, but
no, it's okay. You're excited. I can tell.
It's very hard to describe this. So he has it's like an alternate reality gaming type thing, but he is able to be taken over by the Dragon Emperor at times to go into battles and stuff like this. And his mom ends up being kidnapped and taken by demons. So then he has to go on a quest to save his mom with the help of the Dragon Emperor and some of his friends who are also able to be possessed by their own relative who are mythological figures.
Okay, so that's fun.
It's really interesting, and the way that they like tie in the mythology with the gaming is interesting because the mythological people, which they're not even really mythological, they are actual emperors from China.
Oh, okay.
But so I don't know why I keep saying mythological, but
historical,
historical. But they have increased powers and things like become part of their legend. So like they get more power just from certain stories being told. So it's interesting that like certain powers are like added into things that they maybe didn't know about because stories were told about this. So they're like, oh, well, you can do this on top of bending water or whatever. And they're like, yeah, because people just started believing it. And the more that people like tell stories about something like this, the more real it becomes. And so then it becomes part of your legend and part of your powers that you can wield. Cool. So I really like that. And then they also mentioned at one point something about like, oh yeah, like It's kind of similar to like superheroes in the United States. And they're like, well, the superheroes aren't gods, you know, and they're like,
Right.
well, people treat them like that, you know, and they become
Right.
legendary. And at some point, maybe they will be like this. And I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting and cool. And I love that premise, but it's a really, really good book. I really think it should be required reading for kids. And it's so smart and informative. The author is amazing. And I went and was watching their YouTube channel then, and they are so smart and funny. And I love Xiran. So that's that.
Well, and I also got Iron Widow because you had asked for it when I was out and about for Indie Bookstore Day. And I was like, well, I'll read this and then I'll give it to Laura because I know that you had wanted it. So it's coming your way. Nice. Nice little YA.
Iron Widow's been on my TBR for a while.
Oh yeah, I
had a hard time I had a hard time getting it for whatever reason. There's I guess because it's really popular, huge waits at the library and everything. But Zachary Ying was available, so I listened to that, and it is wonderful. Perfect. Highly recommend.
Well, that's so awesome.
Hannah, I will mention one other book that I
please
listened to. Spare.
Oh, we have to talk about it because I'm never going to read it. How was it?
I don't think you need to read it.
I don't want to. There's not a piece of me that wants to read that book.
I wanted to read it because I am weirdly interested in all of the royal family drama. I have no investment either way, but I'm weirdly interested in it. And this was a strange book, honestly. Yeah. And that's kind of what I expected. But one thing that I do think coming out of the book, I have greater respect for Meghan Markle, because I do think that it has just confirmed my previous belief that she has been very wronged by that whole family and by the media. And I had thought this before, but after getting his account, I'm just like firmly entrenched in that belief that she has been very wronged. And I think that she is handling her own situation that is really crappy with a lot of grace. Yes. So I have greater respect for her. But one thing that I didn't like was the beginning part of the book is kind of slow to get through, I think, because it's a lot of like talk of his time in school and stuff like that.
Right.
And he makes a lot of stupid choices, which kids do. But I don't like how he's always like on the standpoint of it's not my fault. Yeah. Whereas I'm kind of like, maybe you just need to own up to it and be like, that was stupid of me to do this, but it happened and we need to move on. I'm sorry about it.
Or like, I take responsibility for what I did. Yeah. And I am lucky that I'm no longer that person, but I understand that what I did is harmful and some people may have criticism. Yeah. And some people may have criticism for the rest of my life. And unfortunately, that is something I will have to live with. Like, there are ways to take responsibility. But when he tells these
stories, Hannah, they're often like, because it happens like 3 times that I can recall. Right. Him specifically related to almost like costumes, I think, that are offensive. And he blames other people. And I'm just kind of like, look, I get it that you were 18 or 20 or however old at a costume party or whatever, but people don't force you into costumes. I mean,
sorry, I'm just thinking of like all the times I was like, Laura, you have to be this or else I'm going to lock you in a room. Like, come on.
I don't remember that ever happening.
I don't remember weird. That ever happening, like, but forcing someone into costumes.
Yeah, there's one instance where he has infamously been in a Nazi costume, right? And he turns that whole situation into Kate and Willie made him do it. They really thought it was funny and they made him do it. They thought it was funny. And it's like, okay, you know what? Maybe they said that's funny, but you also could have been like, yeah, I really don't think that I want to wear this. I mean, you don't always have to do it exactly what they say. And there's like a couple other instances too where the same thing occurs where he's like, well, so-and-so made me do it. And it's like, look, dude, just own up to it, apologize, and move forward, because you constantly just trying to be like, well, I didn't mean to do it.
Right.
It happened. You did it.
I heard a theory about his book on another podcast where they were talking about like his book and Will Smith's book, because I do have Will Smith's downloaded from the library because I am actually interested in that one. But where it's like when you're in the public eye to the same extent as like Prince Harry and Will Smith, obviously the same level. I'm kidding. Royalty and Will Smith. But like when you've been in the public eye for that long, you almost lose that like inherent check on yourself. Like where it's like, hey, maybe this is a story that's better left unsaid, or maybe I shouldn't like play the victim in this moment because I'm not the victim.
Yeah, I do think that he wants to always kind of play the victim for sure.
Yes, and I think
I do think that's a thing, and I think that there are still unanswered questions about like certain things that occur in the book, certain stories that I shouldn't say occur in the book, certain things that have occurred that he talks about in the book, and especially with his brother that and his dad, that maybe their side of the story should be told too, because there are always multiple versions of a story when there are multiple people involved. So we're only getting one viewpoint. But I do find Harry's account to be pretty genuine to what he feels is right.
Right.
And I don't know that I think that he's lying through any of it. I think he truly feels all of these things. And I think that he also has a very fractured and untrusting relationship, obviously, for obvious reasons with the media. And I don't think we'll ever get over that, but I think he also has a fractured relationship with his father, because his father and the royal family, they play a lot of stupid mind games, basically, to try and push certain narratives about their family.
Right.
And I think that's really unfortunate. And I do hope that Harry is still going to therapy, because they all need it.
Right. Well, and I did see recently, I saw a TikTok that like now that the queen is no longer the queen and we have like King Charles or whatever his name is, I don't remember.
King Charles.
That like all the royal family are going to less events. And someone was like positing the fact that like, okay, if you start going to less events, guess what? People are going to think they need you less. So I think the royal family is going to become less and less
powerful. They're going to kind of phase out.
They're going to phase out because there's just not enough there anymore to like.
Honestly, it's mind blowing that they still exist.
Right.
This monarchy still exists. How much money can this be?
I know, it's so strange. But
there's one point where he mentioned something about like how his dad wants to cut him off or something once he gets married, because there's just not enough funds once Meghan's brought into the picture, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, how much could Harry's kind of like thinking, how much could she possibly cost? You know, like this is billions of dollars. And
right.
I'm like, why is it billions of dollars?
Right.
What are you people doing?
That's even like, do you know that
can't you use that for other things?
But that's like you just learn weird stuff, like how much the royal family is like bankrolled in a ton of stuff, and then you find out that like the presidents of the United States like have to pay for all the food that's consumed in the White House, which yes makes sense to a certain extent. But then if you think about it, it's like, but they also have to have their meals prepared by chefs. Like it's not like they're just running out and getting groceries. They have to buy chef prepared meals. And that is a little bit weird to me. So there's just so many weird things that you don't think about with like politics and everything. Yeah. So
extremely strange.
But I'm sorry, not to go off on a tangent.
Spare was a weird book. I did
glad
not know
you
how to
read
rate it. I think I gave it a 3.
Okay.
Because a lot of the time I was just like, this is too long and I'm uninterested in a lot of it.
That's the whole thing. You just don't have that self-edit. Like not everything you did was important.
It's hard with memoirs, especially from people that I don't know, that think they have so much to say and really they could have cut it down a little bit. It didn't need to be a 30-hour audiobook.
Right.
So Hannah, what have you been reading and watching?
So for watching, I don't know why it didn't pop in my head that like now that I have Peacock, where I'm paying for Peacock, you know, all $5 a month while I'm watching Parks and Rec, I can watch the original Law and Order, like seasons 13 through 24. It's so much better than SVU. Like it's objectively better than SVU. It's just because like because honestly, I think like a huge issue, like obviously we've gone into this ad nauseum. I watch way too much SVU, whatever, where it doesn't matter. But like, because SVU has to have the theme of sexual based violence, like it all has to have pretty much the same standard stuff. Where original Law and Order was much easier to create because it was often like all crimes. So you had like embezzlement, you had murder, a lot of them are murder. But like, honestly, I don't know what this is, but like watching someone get murdered, like you don't have to know, you don't really meet the person before they die. So there is that little bit of removal from it. And like, you're not dealing with like real life victims and watching a real life system, like do all the harmful things that the system does, you know? Where like, and this is just kind of more of a murder by numbers, like, oh, there was a murder. Let's find out who did it. Here's who did it. Oh, here is the defense. And like, honestly, it has better like defense attorneys because it's not just like them trying to slander the victim, which is a lot of the times what's happening. It's like people actually trying to have defenses. And I watched an episode where I don't know how this judge came to terms with it, because like it's in criminal law, you have to provide what defenses you're bringing to the lawsuit. Like there's a complaint and then you file an answer, and in your answer, you have to bring up all your defenses. And if you do not bring up a defense and there are no extenuating circumstances, you have waived that defense, just so you guys all know. And there was a case where one of the guys was like, didn't bring a defense, but the judge still let him like move forward with it under a weird like legal loophole. And I was like, this just doesn't make sense. And then like the guy, the way he was arguing, I was like, this lawyer should be objecting. So like, it's actually smarter, even though it can be wrong. Like there's something about it where I was like, oh, well, like that should have been an objection because of this. And I'm like, well, at least I'm like having some kind of mental work about this and not just like letting it wash over me. Like, you know, like I'm just falling asleep. I don't know, but I've been watching that and that's been fun. So I'm only bringing that up because I know some of our listeners were like, I can't wait to hear Hannah's raging thoughts on Law and Order. And I'm like, oh, Law and Order original was much better. Except
that's good to know though.
Yeah, like I don't know, it is much better.
I feel like people like to have context of whether or not a show is accurate.
Yeah, and I mean,
to what it's like, portraying, and even if it's not completely accurate and has flaws, it's good to know that maybe there's something that's slightly more reflective of the truth.
Yes, and like it had better argument, and like I don't know. Jack McCoy is a weird character who is usually like he's the main person from Law and Order. My dad and I prefer Ben Stone, who was the original Law and Order attorney. He was just a lot smarter and he actually like cared about the legal stuff. And then they kind of brought in Jack McCoy, who was like, justice is the real goal. And it's like, well, yes, it is, but not at the expense of like your ethical.
Him as Saul on Frankie.
Yeah, exactly. He's so much better as Saul. But like he and his like assistant DA often have arguments that are so weird. Cause like the one thing I will say about Law and Order is it like ran for too long. So like characters will bounce back and forth between their viewpoints because none of the writers know what their viewpoints are. So like
that's bad.
I know. And like in one season, because like I always bring it back to like Law and Order SVU. In one season, like Olivia Benson is talking about how like you have to protect like, or she's kind of talking about like, well, I believe in this. And then 3 seasons later, she believes in the total opposite. Different. And it's like, it's incredibly opposite. And I'm just like, well, 3 seasons ago, and I only know this because I watched it way too often, way too much back to back. But I was like, this isn't like logically sound with how she is. And they didn't like make the move on why she changed her mind. Right. And so, you know, and like, I recently watched an episode where like, I wanted to kill the Amanda character because she's awful. And she's like, well, you know, you're sounding like Liv. And she's like, we've all lied to put people behind bars. And it's like,
why have you lied?
I know. But then people were like putting out how she's like hypocritical. And she's like, no, I'm not. I'm consistent. It's like, no, you're not. No one's consistent on this show. This is right. Exactly. It's so weird. So it's just like, and that wasn't exactly the context, but like, it was like, we've all done things that are outside of what we're supposed to do in the name of justice. But like, this is about a cop. And it's like, oh, this is weird. So it's a very bizarre show in those things. Yeah. And like in that episode, like a woman who is accusing her husband of like, this is an SVU episode. Sorry, I'm just jumping around. But in this SVU episode, like it's a woman who accused her husband of verbal abuse to the point where she killed him, and he was a cop. And so like in this episode, Amanda Rollins is like, he was a cop, you know, she could have gotten help, but like she killed a cop and that's all that matters. And like Rollins was literally sexually abused by a police officer. So it's like, what's going on? Like, this is not consistent with the character. You're not looking at like the history of the characters. So there are certain things that happen.
You'd think that they would do a little more homework.
And I don't know if it's just like, I do say that like sometimes I think characters get like torn to pieces at the expense of like the major characters. So like Jack McCoy needs to be interesting. So his assistant DA Serena sometimes has to have inconsistent opinions to make him more interesting. And like Rollins is the only other woman in Law and Order SVU almost ever to exist in like any main capacity, like Olivia Benson. And so because this is still like a very gendered show, Rollins has to be the anti-Olivia Benson to be like her foil. And so if Olivia has to go through something, Rollins
real bad.
Rollins has to do the complete opposite. And so then it's like inconsistent with her character, because it's like, it's interesting. So that's kind of what I've been doing. I talked about Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on the Patreon, so go over and listen to that if you want to listen to Hannah's rundown on her opinions on Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. We're putting that behind a paywall for no reason. For no reason other than I said so. But yeah, I've been doing that. I'm trying to think of if I've been watching anything else. I feel like I have, but you ever have that moment where it's been weeks since I talked to you and told you what I've been watching and
forget.
Yeah,
like just a little while ago where I could only remember the show that I watched last night.
Fair enough. Okay. I will say that, have you been keeping up with Abbott Elementary?
I haven't.
Okay. Well, the season finale, I really appreciated the way they're taking a storyline. Like, I just thought it was really well done. But
I need to. Well, the thing was, I quit my Hulu for a while, and I'm gonna wait until What We Do in the Shadows comes back.
Okay, that's fair.
Just start that up again, and then I'll watch Abbott Elementary when I've got Hulu back.
But yeah, so I've been doing that. I think I've been doing a lot of Amazon Prime shows for some reason.
Interesting. I never think to go to them. I only have really watched just like Wheel of Time and Rings of Power.
I will say that one night I had turned on Penelope because I own Penelope on Amazon. It's one of my going to sleep shows. I love it so much. And for some reason, my phone got turned on to like continuous play. So I woke up and it was like on episode like 10 of America's Test Kitchen. And I was like, what is happening? I'm so confused.
Love it.
I also started rewatching. I rewatched episode 1 of Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist because I was thinking about the song. There's a breakup song it's not, the full song isn't on YouTube, but people go check it out. But on Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, there's a breakup song where they sing the
Mad
Happier
World?
song. No, I believe it's by Bastille. Yeah, it's by the I Want You to Be Happier and Only for a Minute. It's the two characters are singing it to each other as they're breaking up, and it's one of the most heartbreaking like dances I've ever seen, and one of the most heartbreaking like songs, because the way they sing it, like you can really feel the like sadness of that song. And I started thinking about it, and then I looked it up and I started sobbing for no reason. Like I was just like, this is just so beautiful. Like I love this version of the song. And so I started rewatching episode 1, and I realized how like disjointed the first episode is. Like it kind of smash cuts to different, because like it's a ton to fit into a pilot episode. And so they really do it in like an effective way. But I was like, oh, this is interesting to like come back to a show that you love and you have all the context for. And then you come back to like the first episode and seeing how everything was set out for the future, you know? So that was an interesting thing to watch.
I heard there's like a new musical type show with Mae Whitman in it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what it's called, but it's
on Hulu.
Escaping me. Yeah. It was advertised for me to watch, and I can't remember what it's called.
I can't remember what it's called either. But I've seen that as well. Like you should watch this. And I don't know if I want to watch it. I've heard good things. I just don't know if it's called Up Here, because it's
Up
like
Here. Okay,
stuff inside their brains. But I'm not sure how interested I am in it. But
Fair
then again,
enough.
I was interested in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and that became one of the best shows of my life. So
there you go.
What do I know?
There you go.
There you go. So those are some shows I'm watching, pretty much normal. And then for reading, I've been through a lot of books. Like you
So you
had,
read a lot recently.
you had to slow down, and I did not.
I mean, I've read several things, but I know I'm in a slowdown, so
that's fair.
just wanted to mention a couple so the next time we record, I have material.
I'm currently in Mega May, guys. So Mega May, when I read over 500-page books for an entire month. So, and you're joining me to read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clark. We both love Piranesi, so we'll get to see what this book is like. I heard it's a lot of footnotes.
It is a lot of footnotes.
But I listened to Come Fly the World, the Jet Age Story of the Women of Pan Am by Julia Cook. It kind of goes into the history of flight attendants.
Cool.
It's nonfiction, and honestly, like I listened to it as an audiobook. Great audiobook. It was so much fun to listen to. It's interesting to like hear about, because like obviously this was mostly in the 1950s and 60s, I believe. But like to hear about what women were trained to do, what they enjoyed as like stewardesses, and like some limitations they had, and like how certain things had to be done. So like at Pan Am, they had to wear like wool suits the entire time, even when they were going to like jungles, like because that was the uniform, and they had to like act a certain way. They had to have their hair up at all times. Like it was pretty big when they like were able to start wearing it down. And they were like literally trained to deal with like terrorists because they're like important to that. And so you learn all about this stuff and like about the history of it and like why women got into that profession, goals they had and all that stuff. So it's very interesting. I liked it a lot. And then to bring up our Patreon again, to push it a little bit, I read our first Patreon chosen listener submission.
Yes.
I listened to, or I didn't listen to it. I read Sign Here by Claudia Lux. It's called like a horror, but I wouldn't say it is. Like, I understand why it said they call it that, but I would say like it's much more lighter than that, or it's much lighter than that. So it's this very like dark humor novel about a family who like is just kind of living their life. But then you find out through like the perspective of a demon down in hell that he works in a very specific department where he like tries to get souls to sign their soul away to the devil. Gotcha. And like he signs them away for anything. Like, yes, exactly. Sign here. And so he like gets these people to like sign their soul away to like get into the college of their dreams, to get a person, you know. And like there's a lot of jokes on it as like some people like you could sign your soul away for anything as long as we agree to do it for you. And some people will just sign it away for a date with a person, not even a lifetime with them. Like, oh my gosh. So they kind of talk about that, and he talks about how like it's really important to get 5 souls in a family, and he's about to hit his 5th one, so we follow the family that he needs the 5th soul from.
Okay,
I like the premise. And the family has like a little bit of turmoil. There's like a history where the dad's brother was in prison for a while, and you find out why in the book. And like we come in, and the mom's like having an affair, and the daughter's kind of having troubles fitting in, and she befriends this like girl who they all kind of become obsessed with, except for the mom. The mom doesn't really like her, but the rest of the family likes her quite a bit. And like they go to this like summer house where like tragedy had struck them. And like during this time, you find out that like the guy who's working downstairs, he's like not exactly a demon, but like he was someone who sold his soul and then worked his way to this position. Like that's what hell is like working for centuries to do this kind of stuff. And it's very absurdly funny because you're following this family and him, and like he meets like a friend down in hell, and like, but it also like talks about hell in like this very funny way where it's like, yeah, you can order alcohol. It's always Jaeger. Like it's always Jaeger. And it's like, there's always a car alarm going off. And if you go searching for it, 4 more will turn on for the next week, and everyone gets mad at you. And like, you get named ridiculous names. So his name is like Peyote Trip to like make you miserable about your own name. And so like there's so many funny things about this that are just like dark but humorous, and it's fun to see like there are thriller elements, there are horror elements with like the whole, you know, demons and hell stuff, and like he has like a coworker who he's like so annoyed by, who is like, you know, he's kind of like the suck up of the group, and he like loves being in hell, and that he's always like, oh god, that guy. So like even in hell you can't get away from the annoying coworker.
Wonderful. That's great to know.
I really liked it though. It was thank you to our listener and our Patreon supporter who literally suggested this book to me. I loved it. I wrote a review on it. It was a little bit of a shorter review, so I do apologize for that. Just because it's, you know, sometimes with these books, like you want the surprise of it. Like it's fun to talk about this different stuff, and I want people to pick it up and read it, but you also want to be surprised by like the stakes of the book. So I'm giving some elements away, but not all the elements. So you'll have to go find out yourself.
What?
Gotta read ourselves. I think anyone could like this book. Like, I think you would read it and be like, this is really funny. Like, it's just kind of, it's kind of our absurd humor style. So it's very interesting. To be absurd. Yeah, I know. Exactly. So the hell stuff is some of the best parts of it. I love it so much. And then the mystery, like the family and their interactions are fun. I would say like the mom is sometimes a little bit one note, but you know, what you gonna do? You can't win them all. Moms. And then I, as a last one, I will talk about before next week is I read Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid.
How was that?
I didn't like it. I think I thought I liked it for a while. Like I'm actually getting pretty bad diminishing returns from Taylor Jenkins Reid. Like I
think I'm kind of just not going to read any of her stuff anymore.
Okay. How much have you read?
Only Daisy Jones.
Oh, okay. Well, you would probably like this Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo because everyone loves that book. But I did Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I liked it. I would say like it has similar things to Daisy Jones. I feel like sometimes she has similar beats with some of her best works, which are like historical, fun, and then all of a sudden there's like a shock ending, you know? But I would say Malibu Rising kind of has that. I would say Carrie Soto is Back doesn't have that at all. And there were elements that I really did like about it. Like, I feel bad for disliking the book, but like the parts I disliked were like so cloying to me that I couldn't get past them towards the end. So, I mean, for people who don't follow Taylor Jenkins Reid and aren't clinically online on Bookstagram or anything, Carrie Soto's Back is like in a universe that Taylor Jenkins Reid has with like Daisy Jones and the Six and the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Carrie Soto is mentioned in Malibu Rising as a tennis player who one of the main characters' husband has an affair with. And so this book follows Carrie Soto and kind of details into her personality. She is Latina, and she is a tennis player. She grows up and she like wants to be the best, but she's incredibly fierce. She's incredibly like in your face. And she has like, she struggles with like keeping her temper down or like slowing down and trying to make the best decisions for her. She just wants to win, and she wants to win the way she's always won. And she was originally trained by her dad. Throughout time, you find out she wasn't trained by her dad, you know. And so it's interesting. I like Carrie Soto as a character. Like I like someone who's fierce and a little bit stubborn and like can't see the forest for the trees all the time, because I think like we should definitely have that. There has been a lot of criticism for the way Taylor Jenkins Reid wrote a Latina character, because just like sometimes like the Spanish was critiqued because the way the dad speaks is not the way, you know. I will also say that the narrator of this book for some reason chose to use a Spanish accent for the dad, or not Spanish, but I cannot remember where he was from, so like it's not, I will say some kind of Latin type or like Hispanic type of accent to speak for the dad, and I didn't love that. I thought it was a little bit weird to have like a white audio narrator. Yeah, like
strange.
So, or I guess maybe she wasn't. Oh, I guess Stacey Gonzalez did narrate it, so she is not white, but it was still knowing that it was Taylor Jenkins Reid writing it. I just thought it was really weird to have that as a choice.
Yeah, that is a little strange. I never know how to feel about accents and things being written into like books where when it's phonetically like spelled out, it's even worse in my mind.
Yeah, and like
audiobooks are tricky too when they're trying to depict different characters and one of them has an accent or something like that. It's tricky.
I understand it's tricky, and
but I'm also sure you don't want to like appropriate a culture.
I also just know that people had criticisms for Taylor Jenkins Reid doing this and writing about Carrie Soto, so it just felt weird to have this, and that comes down to I'm not saying I think white people should have other characters of other races in their book, but this is a predominantly discussion of someone of not Taylor Jenkins Reid's culture as a star of tennis and all of the racism and all of the issues that go into that.
Right.
And that can be a little bit rough. Go seek out own voices, criticisms of that instead of just listening to me struggle through this discussion, because I am not well enough versed in that. But I will also say that past that, I was giving it a chance because I wasn't sure, I just wasn't quite sure. I listened to it on audiobook. But the thing that really that part didn't sit well with me. I really didn't love the accent reading for her dad. Just knowing the criticism, I just didn't like it. And then Taylor Jenkins Reid shoved in every single historical reference she could think of in this book.
Do not like when authors do that.
It's a character who's in the 80s and 90s. And so you get you get 4 mentions and then I'm done. I don't need to know how much you know about the 80s and 90s, but she's literally oh, I saw Princess Diana in the stands at Wimbledon. And later on, Prince Harry would go to talk about it in Spare. No, sorry. And
remembered exactly what his mom smelled like after it.
Then it's and I read about Pam and Tommy getting married, and I
they were really up to date on every single cultural event that happened in media.
Every single moment she's commenting on it, and I was just so over it by the third one, where it's I don't, and a part of it that goes into that is also Taylor Jenkins Reid is not only making a technically historical fiction novel, she's making her own universe in these novels. So not only did I have to sit through every single historical mention, I had to listen to mentions of Daisy Jones and the Six, of her reading a biography. I didn't realize that
this was a big umbrella.
Oh no, it's
all
an
these
umbrella.
Things were connected.
Because I'm one of Evelyn
less interested now in these books than before. Thinking
one of Evelyn
solos.
Hugo's husbands, I believe, is the dad of the children in Malibu Rising. And Daisy Jones and the Six happen in the same universe, so they talk about them all the time. And it's just every time there's a new one, every single book before it has to get mentioned. So it makes sense in Carrie Soto for her to discuss the affair she had with the Riva woman's husband. That makes sense because they are literally coming out of the issues of Malibu Rising happened during the affair. So it's okay, you're deciding to go off with this woman character, tell her story, totally fine. I don't need to know that she read an autobiography of Daisy Jones and the Six. They exist in that universe. It's written fine.
By Taylor Jenkins Reid.
Right. I just don't need every single needle drop on top of all the historical needle drops. And it bugged me to no end every time it happened.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah, so I just don't love that she's become the historical fiction person of our time. And
it is weird.
Yeah. It's just weird. And I'm not gonna yuck anyone's yum. You get to like what you like.
Yeah,
but
people can like what they like, but it's just interesting.
Yeah, I just wish I liked these a little bit more than I did. I would say at least this one was much more interesting than Malibu Rising, but I rated it lower because I've cared less and less. So,
fair.
And it's an interesting book. And I think sometimes it's just frustrating to read about someone who's yeah, I'm 37 years old and I'm training to try to get another Grand Slam title to defend my title. but then it's like, but I want to win the exact same way I always won. And I don't like that I move slower. And it's like, okay, but you are a professional athlete.
Right.
You do have to learn. Like, it's frustrating to have someone who has to relearn stuff. And like, also a huge question I had during this book, because like her entire life is tennis. We hear that she reads about the Daisy Jones and the Six, but like, it doesn't talk about like she's a reader. She be reading, but it doesn't really talk about like any other interest she has. So like she is a champion until like she's 27 or something, which fine, whatever. But then there's like a 10-year jump where she like comes back to defend her title. And it's like, what was she doing during this time? Like, it feels like she didn't exist.
Right.
Like she just hung out in her house and did nothing and read about Pam and Tommy. Like,
that's weird.
I was baffled by like, it talks about like, well, tennis was her life. So she doesn't really have much of a life outside of it. And she like never really like found like good men to date and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but like, what were you doing for 10 years? Like, were you just sitting in stasis, not doing it? Like, because we're mostly learning about her career beforehand and then this career. And so we don't learn about her. Like at the end of this book, she is still Carrie Soto and she still loves tennis. I'm not quite sure what else you can have there. Like, and she's back. So it just didn't make much sense to me. And I had too many things that I didn't love to like actually like this book. So
yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah. So it's fine. I mean, no one's gonna care. I don't know.
All the Taylor Jenkins Reid's fan. I can't even say her name. TJR. All the TJR fans are gonna come after us. Are you kidding
me? This is the best book of all time, and it's like it's fine. You know, it passes the time, and that was kind of where I was with her, where I was like, well, her books pass the time, and now I'm actively like, I don't know if I want them to pass the time. Like,
what time?
What time? What am I doing with my life in this moment? I know that she's having a new movie come out with Pippa Sue and
Philippa Sue.
Philippa Sue, thank you. And I've got Spare on the mind, and
Simu Liu.
Yeah, thank you. And then one of the other guys who's kind of famous for whatever.
Yeah, he was in The Holiday.
Thank you. Yes, The Holiday guy. And so I mostly have been trying
hot. So
I'm not gonna lie, I've been trying to find out who she ends up with. And it's been really difficult. They've scrubbed the internet of that answer because I don't know if I want to watch the movie. Know. Oh, tell me off mic.
You didn't.
We won't ruin it for everyone else. I didn't read the book.
Oh, you just Wikipedia that you find out, and then
I tried to Wikipedia.
All I had to do was read the plot summary of the book, and then I Wikipedia'd who was cast in what part, and then I found out.
Oh,
simple. Okay, simple detective work.
What's it called again? One True
Loves, I think, is what it's called. Yeah. But it's not even going to be in like all theaters. I think it's just select theaters, and honestly, some of the pictures of the movie don't even look super great.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be that good, but so anyway, but that's what I've been reading, watching, and or enjoying. So and not enjoying actually. So much fun.
Watching and occasionally enjoying.
And then we'll go into the other ones next week. So fair. Today we'll be covering the first half of Miss Percy's Pocket Guide. And if you guys are followers of our website, it says we're doing the whole plot, but Laura and Hannah
Laura was not prepared.
So we will be doing the first 16 chapters.
Laura was not prepared and was like, yeah, totally ready for covering half the book.
And Laura's defense, Hannah does the scheduling, and she didn't think to text Laura and say, hey, we usually cover the entire plot of the novel. And it is a 400-page book, but it's also a cozy fantasy. So it's like in this chapter, she gets an egg. But it's an excellent book. So we compromised and did half of it because Laura has read
because I have not read the second half. So obviously we compromised.
So this is a wonderful book, and if you haven't read it, go pick it up now, read it, and then come back.
Now. It's so sweet.
Because this book is just so adorable. It opens with chapter 1, and throughout these chapters, we always get little insights into Miss Percy's pocket guide.
Yeah, it starts off with like little inserts from the pocket guide, which are really cute.
I know. And there is an insert from the prologue. It was once a commonly held belief that dragons were nothing more than creatures pocketed into the realm of myth and fairy tale. But man also once believed the earth to be flat, and that we sat with prim and unswerving confidence at the center of the universe. Now it is merely man himself who believes himself to be seated at the center of everything. And oh, what a precarious position to maintain when that previously dismissed realm of myth and fairy tale chooses to kick your chair out from under you. And then we learn that that Mildred Percy had a great Uncle Forthright, and Uncle Forthright is now dead.
We begin at the end.
We begin at the end. There is a death in the family, and Mildred is reading at dinner with her little sister Diana, who is an adult woman, but who is married with 3 children.
And kind of a brat.
And Mildred is an unmarried woman who lives with Diana.
She's in her 40s. She's a spinster.
And we find out throughout the novel that Mildred did not get married because she was taking care of her sick father. And then by the time he had passed away, she didn't really have as many options because she was 27. And, once you have 27, you have no prospects. But her sister had just had a child at that time. So she kind of came to help with the child in the interim. And 17 years later is still taking care of her sister's children as a pseudo nurse / governess in everything but name. Like they kind of walk around it because it wouldn't look good for her sister to employ her. So her sister is always like, quote unquote, searching for nurses and everything. But
never found any.
Yeah. Belinda
surprise.
But their Uncle Forthright has died, and he left something to Mildred. They're not really sure what it is, but Diana is hoping it can be money because then she can benefit from it.
She can get it and be like, oh, well, I think Uncle Forthright would have wanted us all to have this, not just you. And, Mildred, you benefit from living here.
Right. And I love this because she's like literally bad talking him. And she's like, oh, Mom loved him, but it was only because of familiar ties and it's terrible. And And you get an inheritance. And she's immediately offended. She was left out of the inheritance.
Yeah.
And so
Diana is instantly very unlikable.
Very unlikable. And she remains so throughout the rest of the novel.
Yeah.
And Diana and like Mildred's kind of like, I don't really remember it. Why would he leave me anything? And Diana's like, probably because you're the oldest. So she's not very comforting. She's not very helpful.
Why would anyone like anyone else besides Diana?
They note that it was like sent 3 weeks ago, so they're going to have to be waiting for it. And we kind of just learn about the family dynamics as Diana gets ready to go out with her daughter, Belinda and her husband to like go see friends. They're trying to get Belinda married. And they think they have like a good prospect for her, where she can be pretty much promised to be married and go on and live her life. And Mildred's kind of like, okay, well, I'll eat dinner and then I'll go to bed. Like nothing big will happen. And then
put on my wool socks and go to bed before 9 and read books.
My dream.
My life.
I know. And it talks about how like she kind of has a space in the attic. She just like lives a very quiet little life. She has a quiet little space. She doesn't ask for much. And she kind of like she also talks about how she once wanted adventure, but at this time in her life, no adventures coming her way.
She's like, yeah, kind of missed the boat on that. I'm too old.
At 40. Oh God.
I still always think of that Dolly Parton movie where the teacher says, Dolly, I'm 26. I'm an old maid. And I'm like, what?
I always think of the Pride and Prejudice meme. I'm 27. I have no prospects. I'm a burden to my parents.
Yep.
But she's getting ready for bed, and there comes a knock at the door, and she realizes that the servants are probably all shut away and don't want to answer it. So she goes, and Squire Manning is there. And he's like, hi, I'm bringing this trunk for you. Like, I was up near Haversall's this afternoon and they said that this was for you. So I drove it all this way. And he brings in this trunk, a travel trunk. And Mildred is like, oh, and she sees the letter. She recognizes the scrawl of the steward of her former uncle. So this will be her inheritance. And she doesn't really know what to do with it. It's just a giant trunk sitting in the middle of the room. And she realizes that she never really gets much in her life. She doesn't have many things. And her sister is quick to get rid of anything that is quote unquote clutter, which means anything the sister does not like.
Right.
And so she decides that she really wants to keep these things. So she opens the trunk and she is like, well, none of this will fit. The trunk won't fit in my room. So she unpacks everything, takes it up. And during this time, she finds little books. She finds journals. And she
all
finds like
notes and like
also
little stones and stuff like that.
And a rather large stone. And she's like, I don't know what this is, but I will put it away. And she hides everything in her room in like the saddest way possible.
This is sad.
Makes me so upset. She's like hiding things under her pillows, like in the doorway. Like she's trying to find any little piece of privacy she could possibly have.
It's sad because it's not only just like a need for privacy, but she thinks that Diana's just going to throw it all out because she doesn't care about books
and doesn't care about this guy. And when she finds out there's no money in it, like it just doesn't matter.
Mildred kind of wants to investigate what it all is. And she just is worried that because her sister doesn't value anything, that she'll just see it all as trash and want to throw it all out.
And this book is delightful because like Mildred has to like pry open the trunk and she like ruins the pie surfer and she's like, I don't know what to do with this, and she just hides it. And she goes on to like thoughts of like, what do I do? I don't know. But she decides she must now hide the trunk because if Diana sees the trunk, she'll know the inheritance game and be like be disgruntled. And Mildred's entire life is like, I just don't want to upset Diana because it's a headache and I just want to take care of her, of my niece and my nephew, not Belinda but the other two. And like I just
like, I care about them and they've done a lot for me. I need to be grateful, but at the same time, Diana sucks.
She decides to hide the trunk in a shed out back where no one goes in so that people can't get to it. And so she starts dragging it. And all of a sudden, someone goes, Miss Percy. And she's like, oh, someone's here. And I'm out at like 9:30 at night and all by myself dragging this trunk. And it's very weird. And it is the vicar, Mr. Wiggin. He's around the same age as her. But it talks about how like people have been trying to set him up with women all the time. Like
he's just not interested.
Diana tried to set Belinda up with him, even though Belinda's like, what, 17, 20?
Yeah.
And he's like the same age as Mildred. But she's like, oh, I was just moving this trunk over here before my sister and her husband return from the Lindens. And he's like, oh, I'm coming from the Lindens. And she's like, what? Are you coming back? And he's like, oh, I did die. And she's like, but it's like nearly 6 miles. And he's like, oh, I left very early. Like I didn't really want to stick around.
Sure.
And then he offers to like help her lift the trunk. There's a little bit joking about like a dead vicar inside because she's like, there's no body in here.
I love that.
And she like offers to let him in for tea, but then she's like, oh no, that's weird, there's only the two of us.
Yeah, that'd be a date.
And that would be a date. And she explains like about the trunk, where it came from, and she like walks around why she's hiding it from her sister, but she's like, oh, I just don't want to upset her. Like she just would be,
she's very nice about it.
Yes,
a lot nicer than I would have been, where I'd been like, my sister sucks and she's gonna throw out all my stuff.
Right. And I'm so excited for this because I never get stuff and I just want stuff. There is something
I just
about being like, there is something about being able to like have things, I don't know, like coziness, but he was like, oh, like he kind of picks up on what she's laying down. And he's like, well, why don't you bring some stuff to me? Like, it sounds like there's scientific papers. That sounds interesting. I'd love to take a look at them and maybe it'd be like used to teach the children in school because he is a scholar. And she's like, really? Like, that's not too much for you? And he's like, no, stop by, bring over whatever.
Yeah.
And so she agrees to come over at 2:00 the next day and bring some things. And so she wakes up and she's like, there's things all around her and she's so excited. And so
it's so sweet.
I know. And so she like decides, she kind of like goes into town. She tells her sister she's going to see the vicar to borrow a book.
Mm-hmm.
And the sister's like, okay, could you give me some pink ribbon? And like doesn't really care. And so she goes to the vicarage. She goes into Mr. Wiggins' study. It's like covered in like tea mugs and plates and everything. She also talks to his housekeeper, Mrs. Babington, who's delightful.
Who is great.
Makes all the food in the world and just fills her up on sweets and everything. And so they kind of go through all the notes. A lot of them are just like ramblings, it seems like.
Sure.
And so she shows him all the things, including some different stones, and the last one was the oblong stone, and as she emptied it, it was in fabric and set in the middle of everything else, as though it were an egg tucked in a nest.
As though it were an egg tucked in a nest.
And so he thinks that he thinks that it is a rock similar to some of the other stones. And if you open it, there will be brilliant crystals on the inside. He's like, maybe I will save this to show off to all the students. And so they're not going to open it quite yet. But they go through everything. They're kind of just leaving notes. And there's just a ton of time the day falls away from them. They lose track of time. And she has to go home. She realizes she forgot her sister's ribbon. But it won't be too big of a deal because no one ever notices her.
Except the sister is going to be like, what? You didn't run my errand?
Yeah,
you didn't run the only important thing you could have done.
And so it talks about how she goes into the drawing room and Belinda is there slumped indecorously or spilled. She does not like her oldest niece at all.
I don't like Belinda either. I don't blame her. Belinda's the worst.
And so Diana forgets that she was even at Mr. Wiggins. She was like, did you get my ribbon? And she's like, oh no, they only had apricot. And Diana's like, oh, I despise apricot. It makes me look sallow.
Like,
don't you think?
Look bad in apricot. That's why I didn't get it.
And Mildred is like, well, I can't say that. I have to be like very, very stuff. And she's like, I could not say. Like, some people think a great color is amazing on someone, and some people hate it. And like the sister's like, well, I can't be offended by what she just said. So I guess we move on. And then Mildred has to like say specifically like, hey, I'm going into the vicarage from now on to like help out. And he
asked me to come in and help with some stuff for the school.
And she like makes sure to not say that she needs permission from it and she notes that like Diana can't tell her no, because then she would have to admit that she sees her sister as her own house worker, and that cannot do. And then, so she's like, well, I just worry about the children. Like, what will they do without you? They'll miss you. And she's like, well, maybe they can come with me from time to time. Or like her sister kind of like brings it up as if it's her idea. And she's like, well, what would I do without you, Diana?
You are a genius.
Yeah. And it talks about how they were never very close, and Mildred loved like mud puddles, and like although they wished for marriage and children, like her stuff fell to the wayside. So it's just a little bit of like life has passed her by, or she feels that way.
Sure. It's almost like a thing too where it seems like Mildred has more of a sense of, I shouldn't say more of a sense of, she's been thrust into more of a role of familial responsibility, taking care of their parents, and now her sister's family. Whereas that didn't really become the role for Diana. Diana was able to get married and have the fam, and didn't have to have the same path.
So she decides to take Nettie and Michael in with her the next day to be around the vicarage while they look through things. And Mrs. Babington is like great with children. She's like, oh, I used to take care of them all
sorts of cake and everything.
She makes them work with her in the garden, cut up things. There are so many times in the first part of this book where the kids are just helping the cook.
Yeah.
Like they're like peeling vegetables because the mom doesn't really like care about the like their schooling until the boy gets sent away, and she doesn't really want the girls to have an education, which sucks. But so they kind of go through things. They discuss everything about the journals. There's like a weird skull that looks like a lizard. There's drawings of like wings and everything. And they're just kind of having a good time. And the kids come in, and the little boy says that the stone that looks like an egg moved. And Mildred's like,
did you on the vicar's desk?
And she's like, did you bump against it? And he's like, no, it moved on its own. And she kind of touches it and it's really warm. And they ask about what's inside it, and she's like, well, we're gonna open it up and there will be jewels inside. Like, I'll let you see. When the Vicar decides to open it, Mr. Wiggin. And so they kind of head out of town. And she talks about like how she's just having a lot more fun lately. And the kids were doing so well and all this stuff. And so the next morning she gets a very early letter from the vicar, and he asks her to come immediately. So she leaves the house, and I love it because she's like talking to the servants and she's like, I went on a walk. I didn't get a letter. And they're like, okay.
I'm just leaving for my morning walk that I always go on.
There's nothing to see here. Nothing at all. And they're like, oh okay.
You're right. So there is nothing happening.
So she dresses, she goes into town, and they're like, so we have some news. And it talks about how like Mr. Wiggin is like beside himself right now. And she walks in, Mrs. Babington is like, you'll have to see to believe it. And he's like, something extraordinary occurred. And she looks down, and there is a little winged like lizard,
like a bat,
like a bat.
But it's not a bat.
It's not a bat, but they don't know what it is. And it hatched from the stone. And it keeps trying to bite off Mr. Wiggin's fingers. And
I'm just picturing the cutest little thing, kind of like a toothless.
Yeah, because it doesn't really have teeth on it. And she's like, well, I don't think it's a bird. And they like kind of look at it. It seems to like Mildred quite a bit. It's very cute with her, and they feed it meat because they somehow know that it definitely wants
and
meat.
It loves chicken.
And it loves chicken. And so they kind of hang out with it, and Mr. Wiggin is like, she's like, well, why don't we get Mrs. Babington to get food for it, like meet it? And he's like, don't show her. And she's like, why? And he's like, wouldn't it look bad in a vicarage to have like, she's like, oh my gosh, it's not a demon. And he's like, I know it's not a demon, but like, doesn't it kind of look like one?
He's like, it kind of looks like a demon. I know demons aren't real. I mean, yes, they are real.
Yes, they are. I'm a vicar. Like, I believe in demons.
I believe in them totally.
So they kind of like just, it also loves potatoes, so they feed it until it's very, very tired and it falls asleep.
And potatoes.
She heads back home from her walk, and her sister like judges her for having the tiniest little bit of mud on her dress.
Rude.
I know, I hate her so much. And she's just kind of sitting there like, oh my gosh, there is a creature that we don't know what it is, and it's just existing at the vicarage right now. It's just existing at the vicarage. And Mildred is a nervous eater, aren't we all?
Right there.
She just keeps like eating and be like, I wish I had more food to eat right now. And her sister's like, oh, Matthew and Nettie were up early. Like, where were you? You know? And she just pretty much sees Mildred as her own personal slave. Her not slave, but personal like housemaid pretty much. And
it's like her personal maid.
And they ask, like, the two kids are asking about the stone and where it came from. And Diana's kind of hinting, like, why are you around Mrs. Babington and Mr. Wiggin? Like, he's a single man. You wouldn't want to be going after him, right? You know, kind of like crapping on her sister. And kind
of. Well, I mean, she definitely is.
And she's like, oh, it's so weird that he's not married yet. You know, he needs like a young woman to like build a life with, like focusing on young. Like it should be definitely young. It should be young. So she's just being the worst. And so she's taking care of the kids. They want to go see the stone. They want to have it open. And she's like, maybe never again. Maybe you're never going there again. And then she realizes that she thinks that the little creature might be a dragon. And she's like, what? This is so ridiculous. Like, oh my gosh. And so
she's like, I know they're not real, but it kind of looks like one, kind of like an alligator. It's a dragon.
Right. And so she asked the kids, like, what do you think about dragons? And Nettie's like, they're not real. And her brother's like, I think they're real. And so they ask her what she thinks. And she's like, well, I can't lie to them because I literally just saw one. And she's like, well, I think sometimes like things have a piece of truth in them. So even if they're not 100% accurate, like it comes from somewhere and there's like a legend.
And that was a really sweet moment.
Right. And they're like, so do you believe in them? And she's like, yes, I believe I do. And then we go over to Reginald Hawthorne, who didn't want to be the villain of the piece, but he is going to be. He is a man who is a broke boy. As said on Abbott Elementary. You're a broke boy. And his father was an alcoholic who gambled away their life savings and gambled away the stone, wink wink, to this man who he found out was recently died. And he wants the stone back because he believes it will be worth quite a bit of money. And so he
knows what it is, I think.
He knows what it is. Yes, he does know what it is. And so he hired someone to hunt down where this stone was. He found out about the will and testament through this person, like exchanging money in the right hands. And so he finds out that this is in the possession of Mrs. Percy or Miss Percy. And he's like, great, an old spinster. I can swindle her or something fierce, and it will be very quick in and out. And on with my life, I will have this egg and I will become famous for having a dragon egg. And he decides to go to this town. He has been in London. He can't really afford living there anymore. So he will use every little last penny and he would find his fortune. And so he sets out to get the dragon egg back. And so Mildred, we kind of cut over. She's getting ready to go see, or she slept in because she's so exhausted from the horror.
I love this moment too, where she's like talking about getting up in the morning, how she does not like being up super early in the morning. She kind of likes it when everybody's all awake, and
so she gets like her own time, and like so she like goes down and Cook makes her like some food and she's excited. Nettie and Michael want to go to the vicarage really badly. They want to see Mrs. Babington because she makes the best cake in the world.
To which the cook is
like drops a bunch of stuff. And she's like, okay, we'll go once you finish your lessons. So
she's like, I gotta make some kind of thank you for the cook because
she's so caring. And so she takes the kids, they meet the dragon. They're so excited. It's such a cute little thing. And she talks with Mr. Wiggin about the fact like it's definitely a dragon. He looks like he's a new parent. He's like so exhausted. And he's like, did you bring something else for us today? No more eggs, right? She like brought over all the other research so they could go through it.
She's like, there's got to be a note somewhere that we missed.
Right. And he's just like, they kind of find some old like drawings and everything from her uncle. And it was like, and they kind of thought that like she's kind of like, my uncle would have never sent me this if he knew it was a dragon. Like, why would he send this to me? I'm no one. And it's like, oh, and they're like, no, but he had to have known something because like, look at these sketches. He's
got like skeletal type sketches.
And she's like, oh, I guess like he might have sent it to me, but it's just so strange that he sent this to like me, his niece. And he's like, well, so there may have been others. This isn't the first one. So they feel much better about that. And also talks about how she often swallows when she's nervous.
And bites her lip.
Yeah. And so they end up like talking about how this is definitely a dragon. And he's like, well, you can keep the dragon here for a little bit. And he decides to reach out to a Richard Gorman, the steward of her uncle.
Which he was like the assistant, wasn't he?
Yeah. Okay. It was the assistant who like took care of everything. And the assistant got the entire estate. Like he inherited the estate and all the like property of the great
all
uncle.
The big stuff.
But this was like stuff he had sent on to her at the uncle's behalf. So they're like, well, why don't we write to him and ask about it?
Right.
And like see if there are any colleagues we can reach out to illuminate this issue. And so she agrees to this. They say that they'll probably have to put the dragon outside at some point to build a fence to like keep him in. And she's like, Mr. Wiggin is like, thank you so much. This is so interesting. And she's like, no, thank you. You're like saving me. I could never have kept the dragon at my sister's house.
And they keep it in the kitchen because Miss Babington like likes to give it treats and everything.
It's so cute. And it just wants to sit by the fire and sleep all day.
I love it.
Same guy, same. And And they do fear he will grow large. He's very cute. And like, she thinks about the fact that she knows that like alligators grow very large. So she can't imagine. And it's already bigger than like a kitten. And so they're just very, very worried about this. But the children love the dragon.
I'm picturing just the adorable little Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon.
Well, we have the beautiful picture, and I do know that she thanked the artist in the comments because this is her imagination of the dragon. So I'm just imagining him as like a little, like, yeah, pretty close. And so they kind of feed it meat. They're having a ton of fun with it. And
they name him.
They name him Fitzwilliam. But at this time, Reginald is coming to Upper Plimpton where they are staying. And they say like it's a village that can grow, or a town that can grow into a village from time to time. And it made me think about the part about the dragon.
Yeah, I was just saying the part about the dragon was mostly
true. Like that's very much that. And so he like talks about how he found out all this information about Miss Percy, and like it was really cheap because everyone's just nosy in this town. And he like had to...
I could totally relate to that being a thing, because I was like, yeah, that sounds like the area that I live, where it's like, oh, it wasn't too hard to find out any information because everyone knows everyone else's information.
So true. It's like that one time I walked into a bar a mile from my house and people were like, do you know someone from around here? And I was like, excuse you.
Everybody knows everybody.
Everyone knows everyone. And it was literally a woman who had babysat my sisters. So yes, I did know people around that area and you had babysat them. But anyway, I digress. So Mr. Reginald Hawthorne had to sell his pocket watch to buy like new clothes, but he still has like threadbare boots.
Yeah. I feel kind of bad because they do notice this about him like right away, that he's like, wearing shabbier clothes.
And he has to walk like 2 miles down the lane to like call upon them, pretend that he is a like an acquaintance and like a co-worker pretty much of their former uncle. And he rings the bell, and Belinda is there to receive him. And he's like, oh my gosh, she's the prettiest girl I've ever seen. I love her. And she's like, oh my God, I love people who love me.
And he is also handsome. It's worth noting. He's very
handsome. And so she's like, oh, my aunt is with the vicar. She's always there lately. And like, he's like, oh, well, I came to like call upon her, like to like give my condolences. And she's like,
I knew her uncle so well.
And she's like, condolences. And he's like, her uncle? And she's like, oh, right. Mama said something about that.
Like, Belinda, you idiot.
And he's like, well, I wanted to say hello. She's like, well, you can just come back, but come back tomorrow. I will tell her all about you and she'll definitely be here. And she just wants to see him again. And he's like, I am so poor. I could not come back and like afford to stay another night, but like I have to because I must see Belinda and I must get this egg. And so he agrees to come back because he comes back
like right away the next day, isn't it? Like in the morning.
And he kisses
Diana is like,
well, and Belinda's also obsessed with the fact that he's from London, and he kisses her hand before she leaves, and he leaves, and he's just like enthralled with her, and she seems a little bit infatuated with him, at least the idea of him.
Handsome and people from London.
This is where we find out that the children call him Fitzwilliam, and Mildred is like, why are you calling him Fitz? Are you kidding? Don't name it. And then they're like, but its name is Fitz. And then she's like, she starts calling it Fitz.
She's like, she was calling it the hatchling.
I know.
Then the name kind of wore on her and she started calling it Fitz.
Well, because it stops being a hatchling, really. Like, it's,
it's getting big.
Yeah. And it's getting bigger and bigger. And so she's like, oh, well, she just agrees that his name is Fitz. And Mr. Wiggins talks about like, well, this, I'm a man of science and of God. And so like, this is such a strange thing, but it must be true. And, you can't expect too much of this. And she comes back and someone's like, hey, did you pass Mr. Hawthorne on your way? And she's like, no, is my sister back from town? Like, did she bring someone with him? And she's like, no. It was the guy who came to see you. And he's coming back tomorrow. And she's like, who? And it said like, oh, he was a friend of your uncle's. And she's like, that's weird. And like, she's like, oh, but maybe he'll have some answers about the egg. Like, that'll be helpful. And she's hoping he'll have some answers very, very soon. And Belinda's like, he had lovely eyelashes. So
Get it together.
The writing of this is so amazing. Mr. Hawthorne, along with his eyelashes, arrived not long after breakfast the next day. And Diana immediately is like, this is poor manners. Like, we should have been digesting, And Belinda's like, but he's from London, Mama.
They don't have the same rules in London.
Jeez. And they know that he's like very young. He is very threadbare. So like,
yeah, they notice his clothes like right away. They're like, okay, yeah,
right.
He's got a nice jacket, but his shirt is threadbare. And
Mildred seems like
that good.
Mildred seems to clock this, but she's also like, oh, whatever. And
she's also, I think, a little more sympathetic.
Yes.
Of him
and she doesn't like,
or empathetic, I guess.
He doesn't really smile at her, and she's like, I'm past the age where that's offensive to me. But he kind of sits down and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm such a good friend of your uncle's, and like, I know he gave you some things, and like, I think like I wanted to look at them if I could. And like, Diana's like, oh, well, something was mentioned of an inheritance, but we never got it. And Mildred has to like admit that they did get it, but it was nothing.
It did come.
It wasn't monetary, so it wasn't any interest to her. And like, she doesn't really believe Mr. Hawthorne about his relationship with the great uncle. Like, something just smells fishy. But she also admits that she might just be jealous that like she has precious things of like her uncles, and she wished got to know him. And it sounds like he did get to know him. And so
at the same time, Reginald is like, she's on to me.
I know. And Diana's also like trying to hint like, so how long do you have until you have to work again?
Diana's like, get out of here. We already have somebody lined up for Belinda. We don't care about you. Leave.
Right. And Mr. Hawthorne is like, well, some of my work's here. I want to like review this material. And Belinda's like, oh, well, you should come and have a picnic with us. And like, and we can all hang out, and I can see you again, and you can look at the documents my aunt has. And
he's like, just send him over to the hotel I'm staying at, or the inn that I'm staying at. And Diana's like, perfect, we'll do that. And then Miss Percy he says, well, I'd rather you come here to look at them, which she did not want to really talk over Diana, but she does it because she just feels very uncomfortable sending this stuff on to the inn.
And Diana just doesn't want him around her daughter because she can tell.
I'm glad that Mildred like does stick up for herself and is like, no, you just come here.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not a big moment, but it's kind of a moment.
But she also knows that he definitely probably wants the egg, and she's like, the egg that's no longer an egg. And he's like, she was lying, and she like definitely knows more than she's saying, and she probably wants the egg for herself. And he's just like ridiculous. And he also was talking about like, I do feel bad for him in certain ways, where he's like, I was so hungry I had to like stop myself from eating all the cakes on the platter because like I'm not eating enough. But he's like,
well, and they said too like about his appetite, that they could tell that he was eating so much that like they didn't know if it was because he really enjoyed the food or because he hadn't eaten in a long time.
Right. And it kind of talks about how like this stone, he believes the stone is his birthright. His father like promised it to him. He really thinks that this is his, and so he just wants it back. So he goes the next day for the picnic, and he's like layering it on thick, and Miss Percy just doesn't seem interested. She lets him look.
Well, and he says something about like, why would people sit outside and eat when you could sit in a perfectly nice dining room where there are no bugs, no ants,
and no children running around? And he's like tired of the screeching children. So Miss Percy like lets him look through the stuff, but he's like, this is all useless. She must be on to me. Like, there's nothing good here. Where is it? How is she hiding it? And so he takes a turn with Miss Muncy, and he admits to her that he wanted something that their uncle promised him, and through like, but it wasn't written down. And so it was taken from him by her aunt, and he's worried she won't return it to him. And so he imposes upon her trying to get it back. And she kind of is like, yeah, I'll totally find that for you.
We'll totally this situation. We'll fix it.
We'll fix this. And he's like, we will fix this. That's an us. And he like thanks her, and they just kind of talk and they rendezvous a little bit. And he asks if she trusts him, and she goes, implicitly.
It's like, Belinda, you idiot.
I know. And so he's like, well, I have a great deal more to tell you, And so
I'm so annoyed with how quickly she writes off her aunt who was taking care of her
for 17 years. Yeah. And so Mildred goes to see Mr. Wiggin. She's like, so we have a problem. Like, someone's here. I think he knows about the stone or the egg, and like it no longer exists. So that's not good. And so she kind of tells him all about her suspicion of him and like how her niece and him had a turn. And like she could tell the niece is a little bit infatuated with him, but she hopes like she doesn't think it'll come to anything because Diana would never let it. And she like doesn't really like Mr. Hawthorne. And they agree that he probably knows about the egg, but he doesn't know about Fitz. And so they kind of have to make sure that he stays out of their notice. And they're writing to all these different scholars. But Mr. Wiggin has like, I have to be careful because I can't be like, so what do you think about dragons? Because they're going to write me off if they think I'm insane. So I have to ask in like very roundabout ways.
I have to carefully word this.
And so they know that like they have to keep tabs on Fitz. They can't just let him like out and about. They have to like make sure that Mr. Hawthorne doesn't get a whiff of him. And they know that he is very desperate. So they also note that like the kids won't say anything about it because it's been weeks. They haven't told anyone about Fitz. So that's good. And they just hope that Mr. Hawthorne leaves soon. And she's like, I don't think he's dangerous, but like, and they also talk about how like Belinda is a chameleon, a shapeshifter, a siren luring sailors to their death, but she's complicated at making people love her or loathe her as she will. And so she says she seems to thrive well enough on our collective indifference towards her, which is also a little bit sad. Like, I mean, Belinda's the worst, but also that has to be upsetting to like have no one care about you and have your only value be in getting married. But they're talking about how they're kind of studying through all of her uncle's things. They're dealing with Fitz. He's growing. He seems to be like very loving of Mildred, especially like he likes crawling in her lap. He likes being around her. And in some of the background notes, we note that like dragons are territorial. They like to communicate through screeching. They're very loyal. And like they don't really like strangers or newcomers. So like we're learning about these backgrounds about dragons through the notes of Miss Percy. And so she makes Nettie and Michael promise not to tell anyone about Fitz because it's very important. And then she goes into her room one day and she realizes that someone's been rifling through her things.
I hate this moment.
It's so...
It makes me
such a good job of like making this heart-wrenching.
Yeah, it makes me sick, honestly. Yeah, because she can tell that somebody has been in there. Things look like they've been put back, but they're not like in the exact place that they were in. And she realizes it's just such an invasion of privacy. And it kind of like goes into the details of like the inner workings of her mind of how she doesn't feel at home here. She knows that she's technically an imposition on these people, but like she tries to pull her weight. She tries not to be and they still too assertive. Don't care for her, and they still don't respect her enough to give her privacy. Well, and like the fact is like they see her room as part of their property, and so they have every right to walk in there. And it just kind of like puts that nail like in the coffin of her like trust in this house and like her trust in her privacy. And she wants to confront Belinda, but she knows she can't because she also knows that like it kind of seems like she knows Diana won't be on her side in that moment, and she knows that like she can't kick a fuss because then like it will fall on deaf ears pretty much. So she has to change for dinner. She just feels really gross in this room now. And she's just very tired of this. And she can like hear her sister's voice, you know, we've taken you in, you know, at no small expense to ourselves. You do not know what economics we have made in order to accommodate you. Of course, you do not have family of your own, so you would not have any idea how much. And it's like, she can hear her sister belittling her if she came to her with this issue. Which is so sad. And it talks about how like she could have lived with other family members. It's just she had always stayed with her sister because that's what she felt was the easiest. And like she did help out around the house. So like, you know, she's just kind of exhausted. So she cleans and she goes to dinner. We learned about Mr. Wiggin and how he teaches the pupils not at the vicarage because it's a little bit too small and he does with the local boys tearing through. So he takes them to church over his watchful eye. Mildred goes and she kind of watches him learn. She asks about the fact that there are no girls and he's like, well, people say that they need them there for chores. Like it's hard enough to get the young boys here. Which is sad. It's one of those things where she says something like, how come there aren't any girls? And he's like, Look, I have tried,
I'm doing my
but
best.
people say that they need them at home to help with chores, and the ones that could go to school that can afford it, they're like, we'll hire tutors.
And he talks about how like revolutions are often like steady and they're not like, you can't do everything. And she's like, well, history always talks about the people who did it like quickly, and like usually it's much, much longer. And he's like, yeah, no one wants to read about Stephen the Steady or Richard the Reliable. They want to read about kind conquerors and Lionhearts. And so they talk about like Fitz and about the dangers of Belinda now. And they're and they talk about how Fitz's pen is now done. They had like one of the neighbor people help saying it was like for chickens and everything.
Yeah, made like something similar to like a chicken house. The neighbor boy did.
And so they go in, she like looks, she plays with the latch, she sees Fitz. He seems pretty happy with it. There's like straw, and she's a little bit worried about the fire. And they're like, listen, he didn't turn anything, because he's kind of breathing fire and sneezing fire. And they're like, well, he didn't set anything on fire in the house, so he should be fine. And so Fitz is like super excited to see her, and like loves being scratched by her. She's very like affectionate with him. And they note that nothing has come from Mr. Gorman yet. And they're like, well, but we also tried to not be too hasty with it, so maybe he doesn't see the big issue. And so they also talk about like how Fitz seems content there. And she's like, I would be in the height of contentment as well if I were in a similar position. And Mr. Wiggin gets like blushes and gets like kind of flabbergasted with her saying she enjoyed her time there. And I'm like, ooh, romance is brewing.
Something is happening.
But she thanks him, and she like for all he's doing, and like how he, and he's like, well, I get to do discoveries for myself, and like this is helpful for me.
Which I appreciate him from the standpoint of just like, no, you're helping me too.
Right.
I don't know. I liked that, where he could have just been like, oh, you're welcome for all the help. But
and
he's like, no, I really appreciate this.
And he kind of is like, well, I can get lonely. And she's like, well, you have Miss Babington. And he's like, I obviously wasn't talking about that kind of lonely. But he doesn't say that. And he's like, yes, I do have her. And she's like, yep. And she's lovely. So they go and they have cookies. And so later that night, she's going about her bedroom routine. She's brushing her teeth when all of a sudden, like, one of the maids rocks it, like, thumps on her door. And they're like, Miss Percy, there's a fire. And she's like, there's a fire where? And they're like, in town. And there's a note from the vicarage. And it's like, Fitz has escaped.
He escaped.
And it's like 9:15. So she goes to leave. And Diana, like, literally tries to stop her from leaving the premises. And it's
Which
like,
is
can't
weird.
Leave. It's too late at night. How dare you? Like, you can't go scampering about the country because this is just caught cold. That's from.
She's like, well, I could help if there's a fire,
Yeah. And she's like, I need to go check and see if everything's okay. It's near the vicarage. And like, I want to make sure I can help. And Diana's like pissed that she's not listening to her.
How dare she?
I know. And so she walks the 2 miles into town. If you think about it, like she leaves and walks 2 miles into town at 9:00 at night. I mean, I would be a little scared, but go Miss Percy. So she walks up.
And also that takes a while.
I know. And she asks where Fitz is and where the Miss Primroses are, whose house is on fire, like part of their house is. And where Mr. Wiggin is to make sure he's okay. Fitz is asleep in the kitchen. Mrs. Babington, this is the beginning of Mrs. Babington often giving Fitz alcohol to make him pass out. To sleep. She's like, I gave him some whiskey, and so he will be out for a while. And the Mrs. Primrose were removed from the house before any injury can befall them. They're well, but they're a little bit like upset. And Mr. Wiggin is helping get like hoses and everything to the water, or hoses from a tank to the house to like put out the fire. And his arms are showing, and she is dazzled by how alive and how well he looks. And so
I think it's funny too, like that the Mrs. Primroses are like, we saw this thing, it looked like a bat, but it wasn't a bat. And it's funny because there's like something mentioned like, I think we're okay because they're kind of old and people aren't going to really believe them.
They're like, well, they're a little hysterical right now. Like sometimes there's just like, well, whatever, they'll be hysterical. It's fine. And they talk about like how they were really shocked and it's just like screeching at them and set something on fire. So I'm sure like I had a theory that Fitz was looking for Miss Percy and then like got confused and was like,
yeah. Somebody like screamed at him and he was like, ah! Accidentally caught something on fire.
She makes sure that Mr. Wiggin is not hurt, and he's like, "Oh, I'm fine. Don't worry about me." And he like sends her back to the vicarage to sit with Fitz and make sure he's okay. And she kind of goes in, she looks at him and she's like, "Oh, Fitz, like, come on, dude." And he's just sleeping.
He's like rolling around.
He's like curling up on her. He's like putting himself around her neck like a stole. And they all sit together and they're like, "Well, Mrs. Babington made sure to check on him and secure his pen, but he must have gotten out. I'm not really sure what happened. He saw the flames through the kitchen window. He made sure that they were out, and then he rushed back in and he grabbed Fitz." I could just imagine the vicar be like, "Fitz!" like, running out of there. Come here. And they're like, "Well, I suppose that means you cannot stay here." And they're like, "Well, where's he gonna go? Like, he's your charge, so you get to decide what to do." And she's like, "Yeah, but you guys are like so part of this." And he's like, "Well, this isn't like, you're not in a position to keep him." And she's like, "But neither are you. Like, this is pretty bad, you know." And she doesn't know what to do. And so they're like, "Well, what do you propose?" And she proposes taking him to go see Mr. Gorman because he should be able to help. And she could tell that like that Mr. Wiggin is like, "Well, you can't travel alone." And she's like, "I can't travel with you. We're both single. It's inappropriate." And he's like, "Well, Mrs. Babington will go with you." And he's like, "I'll be fine. Like, you guys take Fitz or
Percy says, "I'll take Fitz." And
yes,
he's like, "Are you sure?
Are you sure? I can take Fitz for a couple days." And she's like, "No, I think it would probably be best. Like, he can travel. It might be good to do it right now."
And she's like, "Nobody's gonna mess with me if I have him. Freak
right.
people out."
And so they're like, "Well," and she also says like, "Mr. Gorman may not believe me. Like, I need to have proof, so I really need it." And so Mr. Wiggin is like, "Okay, as long as you're taking Miss Babington, we'll do that." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, how am I ever going to tell my sister about this?" Thus leading us
off on a journey.
We are halfway. Whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa, living on a prayer. So Laura, what do you think so far?
I love this book.
It's so adorable.
I love it so much.
Cozy fantasies, like, it's just so lovely. I've read it all, so I can't wait to see what you think next.
I love it so much. I posted on Twitter the other day when I had started it and I was only like 100 pages in. I was like, "I love this book. It's amazing, and I will shout it from the mountaintops." I already got another copy and I'm going to give it to my mom. I know that she will love it.
Oh, good. So yes, I can't wait to read more. I can't wait for us all to read more. Guys, let us know what you're thinking. You can tell us at ourpod@gmail.com or on Twitter, Instagram, or even the Hive, where we are also on at OWWR Pod. So go on all of those. Make sure you follow us. Make sure you're downloading episodes and rating, reviewing, and subscribing, because that really helps
Spotify as well now too.
Yes, you can rate, review, and subscribe on Spotify.
Really easy.
So make sure you guys are doing that. Look to our blog right now on ourpod.com. We were supposed to have a review of the wonderful Emily Edwards, Viviana Valentine Goes Up the River, but I ran out of time to read it with Mega May coming up. So we will be writing a review for that very soon, but make sure you're checking out that stuff going on. Subscribe to our Patreon if you so choose. That's a great way to support us. And just make sure you're following along during Intermission. Thank you so much to Quenby Olson for writing this book. We're adoring it so far.
I love it.
And we're so glad it won, because this is delightful. And congratulations to the winner of our giveaway for this. I have not sent the book out yet because, again, I have been very busy, but you are getting it soon. But yes, I just hope everyone is having a wonderful time. And I
Thanks
can't
for
wait
listening
for
so
you guys
much
to learn more about this book. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.